Good morning. It is my honor to welcome you to the 2021 Georgetown University Pivot Program graduation ceremony. My name is Alyssa Lovegrove, and I am the academic director of the Pivot Program. This is indeed a very special occasion, and we are really delighted to have all of you here with us. And by here, I am including those of you who are watching our live stream, as well as those of you seated here in the auditorium. We wish that we could have included everyone in our in-person gathering, but as you can appreciate, these continue to be somewhat unprecedented times. However, we are very grateful to be awarding the certificates in person to our graduates. Some of you may not realize this, but Cohort 3 has been an entirely virtual experience, right from the initial interviews to today. We have seen each other only on 2 prior occasions in person. The first was when we handed them their backpacks and computers outdoors on a very chilly November day. And the second was when we gathered for an unofficial ice cream social on what was, thankfully, a very mild late March afternoon. And today, we are also making good on a promise we made to Cohort 2 exactly a year ago, that we would welcome them back here to Georgetown for a proper graduation ceremony just as soon as we could. So over the next hour or so, you will hear from some of our graduates, our faculty, program leadership, and for me, I would just like to share one thought. Many of our fellows have described Pivot as a life-changing experience. And even as I say that, I recognize that life-changing can be a somewhat overused expression. But what I would like the fellows to know is that the lives they are really changing are ours. All the people here at Georgetown and beyond who have the opportunity to get to know them and to support them, they have enhanced our lives every bit as much as we have theirs, and we are truly grateful for it. And now I'd like to ask our friend and colleague, George Chochos, to lead us in the invocation.
May we all stand? While my mind and my body is at Vera, my heart is still here with Pivot. So it's an honor to be here. I celebrate you. And now let us assume the posture of our choosing. O gracious God, we gather today to celebrate what President Barack Obama termed the audacity of hope. A hope that begins to spring forth when these fellows started to envision a once seemingly impossible future. A hope that breaks the societal myths that caricature people impacted by the criminal injustice system through the processes of dehumanization that brands people with the insignia of their worst moments, stifling human ingenuity. Great Creator, through Georgetown's transformative education-centered and cura personalis and coupled with integral internships, you have allowed these Pivot Fellows to grab hold of their life trajectories and forge a new destiny. Blessed Provider, we are thankful for the families who walked with their loved ones through this journey, sacrificing time in the present for an investment in the future. We are grateful for the internship hosts that allowed the brilliance of our Pivot Fellows to add value to their businesses and organizations, helping to change the narrative around hiring returning citizens and realizing people are more than the societal labels placed on them. We are thankful for the faculty and staff who have labored to bring us to this moment, and we are mindful of the important relationship between Georgetown and the Department of Employment Services that is changing the national discourse on what is possible when institutions of higher learning and government entities form strategic partnerships. Oh God, we are grateful for the perseverance of the Pivot Fellows who, through a pandemic, a time of unprecedented uncertainty, did not just survive but thrived. And we implore you for your continued blessing on those gathered today and that for years to come. May Pivot be a place that shapes future generations of fellows who will go out like our fellows today and change the world. Amen. And now I'd like to introduce Mark Howard.
Good morning, and congratulations to cohorts 2 and 3 of the Pivot program. I'm honored today to be introducing someone who's been a friend to this program since before it even existed. Many of you know that Pietra and I like to recount what we call the origin story of the Pivot program in early 2018 when we first developed the idea. But not everybody realizes that our second meeting was actually more important than that first meeting. Because that's when Brian Ferguson, who at the time was the MORCA director and was finishing his degree at Georgetown, introduced us to Charles Jones. Now, I'll be frank, it was not an easy meeting. Mr. Jones pushed us hard, and I felt like he was testing us. He asked tough questions, and he wanted guarantees from us that this program would involve a serious commitment by the university and that our support for returning citizens was genuine and lasting. These were totally fair questions, and I frankly respected him for asking them because no university had ever created anything like this before. And I also appreciated his questions because they showed his own strong commitment to returning citizens, which I've continued to see ever since. By the way, now that the Pivot program is established and thriving, many universities contact us to ask, what is our secret sauce? How did we do it? And then they're surprised to hear me tell them that the key linchpin of the program is our government partners. As we've said many times before, we're so incredibly grateful to the DC Department of Employment Services, and in particular its director, Dr. Unique Morris-Hughes, for trusting us with this partnership. And today I'm thrilled to present to you her deputy director, Mr. Charles Jones. He leads the Division of State Initiatives team with more than 40 employees, and he's helped to launch and oversee numerous important DC programs, including Project Empowerment, of course, also DC Career Connections, the LEAP program, Back to Work 50+, the Diversion program, and the DC Jail Work Readiness program. He's received numerous awards and accolades, including the prestigious K-Fritz Award for distinguished DC government employees. So please join me in welcoming someone who's not only what you might call the co-originator of this program, but also now my friend, Mr. Charles Jones.
Good morning, and congratulations to cohorts 2 and 3 on your successful completion of the Pivot program. As the Deputy Director for the Department of Employment Services, I applaud you for all that you have done. Your continued journey to success means more to me than you would ever know it. Your greatness that you've been able to show over the last 2 years, including cohorts 2 and 3, speaks volumes. As I think back and as I was asked, I'm like, wow, this is the first graduating class since the District of Columbia has actually opened. And for that, and the perseverance and the patience that you guys had, you should give yourself a round of applause. I gotta tell you, this was an especially tough time for everybody, for everyone, over the last 15 months. But I'll tell you, I'm not sure how well I would have been able to do if I had to learn something new. See, I've been in my role for a while, so I was able to make things happen. And clearly, Zoom and Team kind of had me like zoomed out for a minute, but I was able to adjust. But for many of you, you've had to pivot. Did you get it? Pivot programs, you know what I mean? So you guys were able to make that shift, and that's what's important. That's what it's really all about. You guys took a challenge and made it an opportunity. That is what life is about, being able to, whatever comes your way, finding an opportunity to make it happen. And actually, I think back many years ago, and I know I'm in a university, and I think about in my fraternity. There was a lot that went on during that process, and I actually think about, there's a word that comes to me, and it's called perseverance. And that's exactly what you were able to do in the midst of all of this. So don't take what you've done for granted, because I'm telling you, I'm like, wow, not sure of how I could have done it. But when I think about the word perseverance, again, this is 30-something years ago, I think about cohorts 2 and 3. I think about Pivot. This Georgetown partnership, I have to tell you, is like a highlight for me. So I really appreciate everyone who was involved, and Mark was right. When I came to Georgetown through Brian Ferguson, my good friend, I'm like, wait a minute, what is this all about? Why, who, what? But guess what? You've already shown me the why, the who, and the what. So to Georgetown, I thank you. You know, I also think about like my staff. Charles Smith, I want to just say thank you for doing all that you've done over the last couple of years. Thank you. You know, as Mark has already mentioned, what I've known for years is that government cannot do it all, at all. We need the private sector, we need the universities, and when I think about that, I want to just also say thanks to all of those employers, those business organizations who stepped in, either through a Zoom call or a Teams call, just to give their expertise to all of you. You know, and when I think about the Georgetown and DOES's partnership, I also think about it's not just about workforce. This is about education. And when you can bring education and workforce together, you are definitely on your way to the middle class. Absolutely. You're on your way because we've been able to develop a strong partnership with supports, and again, that's what makes it happen. I also recognize that this is not, again, without you guys, there would be none. And if it wasn't the success of cohort 1 and 2, this probably would not be here today. So again, remember, this is all about you. This is all about what you do next. And hold us to the fire. With what we say we're going to deliver, we make sure that we deliver, because that is our responsibility to you. But I have to say, it seems like they've been doing it, right? We've been doing it, right? You guys have been making it work. So just, again, thank you. Continue to live in your greatness. Continue to live on purpose and with purpose. And before I step away, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to live in my purpose.
Good evening. As a Pivot graduate and a former staff member, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Janine Turner. She has taught every cohort for the past 3 years, and she has shown us how empowering it is to tell our own stories and be defined by the best that is in us. For many of us, telling our own stories first reminds us that what we say can and will be used against us. Yet still, as you go through the process that Janine provided, we realize how liberated it is, and we rediscover our talents, our strengths, and our tenacity. We will use our own narrative for the rebuilding and the uplifting of our own families and communities. Please welcome Professor Janine Turner.
It's so nice to see everyone. Today, what I'm going to talk about is what I learned about storytelling, and that storytelling is transformative, and also that Pivot is the perfect name for this program. About 3.5 years ago, during the summer of 2018, Alyssa called me and asked me if I wanted to teach in the Pivot program. And while DC law prohibits employers from asking individuals about their criminal record, we thought that their participation in Pivot would open up that conversation. So we thought that I could help the fellows think about and tell their own story. And this is where my journey with Pivot started. We use this framework called the story spine, which is based on the idea that when you tell a story, you start with background information and then something leads you to a pivotal moment. And because of this pivotal moment, the character's path changes, revealing a lesson. And this pivotal moment is what leads to the lesson. And Ralph was talking about this himself in what a beautiful introduction, so thank you so much. When we first started using the framework, most of the fellows talked about the pivotal moment as the moment they made a decision leading to criminal behavior and then ended with them getting arrested. This was the story sticking in their minds. Even though they had served their time and were released from prison, the story they told was what led them to prison. And I tried to talk about their accomplishments while they were incarcerated, the certificates they'd earned, the mentoring they'd done, the jobs they'd held, the languages they had learned. But it was hard for them to see these accomplishments as relevant. And a social worker who was helping with my very first class was a returning citizen himself. And he got up and he said, "You have to change the way you tell your story. If you keep ending the story with when you were arrested, then no matter how long you've been out of jail, mentally you are still there, and you are the one keeping you there." It was a powerful moment that changed all of us. And I tell this story each time I teach the class. Our stories actually have no beginning and no end. We pick an arbitrary moment from which to look back or forward, and the moment that we pick is pivotal. Over the last 3 years, I've seen students, one by one, start owning their successes and experiences. Instead of their crime being the pivotal moment of their story, they each started identifying when they made the decision to take control of their life and change the way that they looked at the world. And this exercise is not easy. Not only did they have to figure this story out, but they had to tell it multiple times, be videotaped telling that story, and receive comments from their peers about their story. But watching the change in these stories is transformative. As the fellows told their stories, I heard stories of resilience and courage and insight, determination and wisdom. I also witnessed those stories in the way the fellows before you from the last 2 cohorts approached this class. One student fell and had a compound fracture a few days before my class and refused pain medication because of his past experience with it. He never missed a single class. Some of these students entered the prison system prior to the emergence of the internet, and then they were released into a digital world. I saw their determination as they figured out LinkedIn and how to use a smartphone. Several students had to deal with the challenge of homelessness while simultaneously navigating school and getting their homework in each week. Over the last year, the most recent group of graduates had to manage the challenge of a pandemic, a very divisive political year, and online classes. On January 6th, my first day with the students, we were online at 4 o'clock while the Capitol was under attack. And the fellows were engaged and contributing in a thoughtful way to our conversation about conflict and the danger of stereotypes and the tragedy that can come from misunderstanding. Several of the fellows told me this year that the Pivot program's online community served as a window of inspiration and hope and friendship and support. I'm amazed to look at the fellows from the 3rd cohort today and realize that I never saw you in person before today. And to the 2nd cohort, welcome back. Your commitment to being fully present, whether online or in person, in this class was so critical to our success, and we all thank you for that. Through listening to your stories, I have learned that empathy and understanding is not just about trying to put yourself in another person's shoes. Instead, it is also about knowing that you, except for a situation in which you were born or something that happened to you, your gender, your race, a mentor, a parent, a teacher, a friend, could be walking in the exact same shoes of the person you were talking to. Going back to my storytelling and pivotal moments, my experience with the Pivot Fellows over the last 3 years has been pivotal for me. Because of you, I'm a better teacher. Because of you, I'm a better parent. And because of you, I am a better human. Thank you for teaching me that storytelling can be transformative and understanding that our stories are how we understand how to pivot. Thank you so much.
All right, I'm gonna try not to cry, but Janine, whew, got me going. All right, good afternoon, all. Thank you for joining us. Oh, forgot this piece. Both in person and virtually for this momentous occasion. My name is Aaliyah Graves Brown, Georgetown University, class of 2017, and the Pivot Program Manager. I have the honor of introducing this year's graduation speakers, but would like to share a few words with you all first before they blow me out of the water. For the last 7 months, I've had the privilege of working with 10 graduates from cohort 3, day in and day out. In that time, you all have completed 11 courses, an extensive design thinking project geared towards redesigning reentry in the district, and a 6-part financial literacy series. You've heard from 15 guest speakers and 10 internship partners, and of course, what I'm sure will be everyone's favorite statistic, you spent about 600 hours on Zoom. Your eyes will thank you later for that. 8 months ago, most of us were mere strangers, and today we gather here as family to celebrate your incredible achievements. Somehow, even through your little squares in Zoom, you've managed to forge relationships that will last far beyond today. I've watched each of you grow as students, friends, entrepreneurs, and community leaders. To David, Camelia, Victoria, and Latasha, thank you for allowing me to be your coach, for showing up to our meetings, buying into this process, building our relationship, and being crazy enough to let a 25-year-old attempt to give you a little guidance. Each of you have taught me so much about what it means to be a leader and to show up for your people. I'm so proud of you. Though I was unable to get to know all of the fellows with the same depth, I know that our rock star of a team took great care of you, because that's what our team is made up of. Rock stars who show up to work every single day with huge hearts and wild dreams about the potential of this program, this institution, and society as a whole. Benita, Ralph, Pietra, Mark, Alyssa, and Josh. Excuse me, guys. Thank you for empowering me to lead. I could go on and on about the many ways in which each of you has impacted me as a person and a professional, but for the sake of time, I'll just say that with folks like you, our potential for change and for justice is boundless. Excuse me, guys. By now, I'm sure most of you have heard the news. I will be moving to Cambridge in about a month to start my first year. To start my first year at Harvard Law School. While uttering those words still sounds so bizarre, it is true. Funny story, when I posted about my acceptance on LinkedIn,
Miss Camelia Finley left a comment saying, "I'm so proud of you. I feel as though I had everything to do with this." Of course, she was being funny, but she was absolutely right. Every single one of you, graduates, and every single one of my students at DC Jail had everything to do with this. Everything. I will never have the words to express how much you've taught me, how much you've shaped the way I show up in the world, and truly how much you've changed my life. All I can say is thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will sadly be leaving Georgetown, but I will carry each of you with me to Cambridge and beyond. So now that I've cried, it is my honor to introduce two incredible representatives of this year's cohort. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Charles Hopkins and Miss Camelia Finley.
We up in this house today. First acknowledging Pivot class of 2020 and 2021 and their families whose support made our success possible. Dean Paul, Amada, the Pivot staff and faculty, because there's so many of y'all, to give y'all a big hug. Donors and supporters, especially the Department of Employment Services, and now I get to see who he is. Thank you. Oftentimes, when we reflect on our past struggles and misfortunes, we get philosophical. We lament, why me? Or why not me? Our selection in the Pivot program addressed the why me, because you and I have value. Therefore, why not us? This journey through Pivot, however, raises another question, which is rooted in its direction. What's next? In prison, your what's next is always given to you. Your time is regimented. The minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks, and the years are all captured in a set of rules and regulations. And when you finally gain your freedom, time loses that shape and that regularity. You can do anything except no one will hire you, no one will invest in your ideas, and your family has made a life without you. In Pivot, the first thing they gave us was a schedule, the next class, the next assignment, and yes, the next professor. The pivotal moment, I realized that all these activities had something in common: choices. Pivot helped us create a mindset of what will you do, what will you choose next? What's your next job, your next business? Which of these opportunities will you choose? This expectation comes from the belief that we will always be progressing, always producing, always growing, so it will always be a next. It comes with the understanding that we are making a difference and contributing to the advancement of humanity. Because of Pivot, we are the phoenix rising from the stigma associated with our return. That we are always looking for the next opportunity to give back, the next opportunity to help. This is what is next. When I see my fellows, I don't ask, what are you doing? But what is the next chapter in your journey? Why? Because we are Georgetown Pivot Strong. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call my good friend and sister, Camelia Finley, remarkable woman, Camilla.
Okay, so I already started by asking the other fellows to pray for me that I don't cry because I am the crybaby. So I'm going to try to get through this. I would like to begin by saying thank you to Georgetown University, Dean Almeida, the McDonough School of Business, the DOES Deputy Director Charles Jones, Workforce Specialist Charles Smith, the Prison and Justice Initiative, the Pivot staff, all of the teaching professors, teachers, assistants, tutors, contracted programs, and their staff during this cohort, and a very special thank you to all the internship hosts. When I was accepted into the Pivot program, I was given an ultimatum. Choose to stay in the home I was living in or do the program, but not both. What made me choose the Pivot program over having a bed to sleep in? Knowing what homelessness feels like. Having been abused and overlooked, living on the streets, going hungry, cold, sleeping on concrete. Having to steal, lie, sell my body, and let go of my soul to survive. Why on earth would I choose the Pivot program over some form of security? I still can't answer that question for you 9 months later. What I can say is I chose Pivot anyway. I slept on couches in a transitional home. I applied for food stamps and sought therapy. I woke up every day and prayed that the decision I made was the right one. As I look out over the audience at Michelle, David, Ty, Ernest, Victoria, Latasha, Nard, Pascal, and Charles, realizing they all had decisions to make as well. Their decisions may not have mimicked mine, but it was a decision to make all the same. We decided to put our future in the hands of individuals we didn't know, without a guarantee it would turn out right. We chose to live off a bi-weekly stipend, give up our days and even nights, open our minds to a new way of thinking, and now you're sitting in the presence of brilliant, strong-willed hustlers, know-it-all at times, combative at times, and hard-headed most of the time, individuals who decided to let a group of strangers lead the direction of their futures. Personally, I kept in mind two individuals, Kamar and Jeremiah. My sons who are in the audience today. I needed them to see that I was capable of making a decision with them in mind, capable of finishing something, capable of being a mother, capable of succeeding, and capable of real change. I stand here today and I look out into the crowd, half supporters and half returning citizens. I think of what the world says about us. We'll return to prison. That's what we all know. Push us hard enough and we'll go back to what we know. We have been labeled with scarlet letters, FELONS. But can you tell who's who? If we remove the cap and gowns, would we look like felons to you? When you converse with us, walk into our businesses, take meetings with us, can you tell? This is what Pivot has done for us, allowed the world to see us differently, reigniting our passion to succeed and giving us a chance to show our brilliance. I honor each of the fellows today for pushing and not giving up, knowing that better is around the corner. You are allowed to sit here today screaming, I did it. Success looks good on you. You did what wasn't easy. You've been able to produce outstanding business ideas, redesign reentry, recreate how the world looks at returning citizens. Accomplishments fits you all so well. And to my new family, Cohort 3, We supported, encouraged, mentored, tutored, and made sure we each made it across the finish line, all on Zoom the entire time. I am so proud of you. Today, we also celebrate the second cohort of the Pivot program who had to sacrifice their graduation due to the pandemic. Watching the continued success of these individuals, I know you had to honor and support each other in the same way. We are all proud of you as well. I finished the last requirement needed to graduate on June 23rd, my mother's birthday, who passed 15 years ago. Addiction, failure, and no drive is what she saw. Because of incarceration, I couldn't say goodbye, and she was never able to see my change. 20 years ago, Mom and I were on the subway having a conversation. Camellia, when God gets his hands on you, you are going to be something great. All I wanted to do was have a conversation with her and tell her of all my accomplishments. As the tears were flowing down my face, I began having that conversation with her. Mommy, I did it. I've been sober for over 2 years. I'm constantly in my children's lives. I finished this program. I started an intern and ended up with my offer letter as an employee with Deloitte Consulting Firm. I am no longer homeless, but actually paying rent. I've created a website that will change lives for returning citizens. Yes, Mom, I did it. I am becoming the woman you told me I would be. So as I end this speech, I have to show my gratitude to my village. You each know who you are, and you deserve this as much as I do. Everyone here today, your presence here says to the world that we are no different than those who haven't gotten caught. Cohort 2 and 3, be hungry for success. Be hungry to make your mark. Hungry to be seen and to be heard and to have an effect. And as you move up and become successful, make sure you are also to be hungry for helping others. Thank you.
Camellia, you forgot to introduce me.
I have to introduce her. I love her. This is Pietra.
And I love you, Camellia. So, moving on from those remarkable remarks, thank you, Charles and Camellia. What an honor it is for me to introduce Rosemary Kilkenny to represent the university's leadership today. Though neither Rosemary or I are too keen to admit this, we have known each other for about 40 years. Okay? For me and for many others in the Georgetown community, she is a role model, she is a mentor. Rosemary is linked to our community in so many ways. Of course, she serves as Georgetown's first Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as well as Chief Diversity Officer. But Rosemary is also a Georgetown graduate, receiving her law degree in 1986, and Rosemary is a Georgetown parent. As many of you know, Rosemary has been a special friend and supporter of the Pivot program since day one, and she has taken the time to meet with each of the 3 cohorts. Rosemary's leadership roles here at Georgetown are too many to mention, but they include contributions to the Working Group on Slavery, Memory, and Reconciliation, the Task Force on Gender Equity, and the Working Group on Racial Justice. In both gender and racial equity, Georgetown has very far to go still to reckon with its past and to meet its promise for the future. But because of Rosemary, Georgetown is so much further along this hill we are climbing. She was always determined, but somehow never discouraged, and that's an inspiration to all of us. Please join me in welcoming Vice President Rosemary Kilkenny to give the university address.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Pietro, for those wonderful words. I am truly humbled by them. I am still in denial that I need reading glasses. It doesn't matter how big the print is, I still have to put these things on. So I will wear them. What a powerful morning we have had in the past 15, 20, half an hour. Let's please give the previous speakers a round of applause. This has really been truly an amazing day for me. And nothing else seems to matter for me the rest of today. I mean, this is it. The day doesn't get any better than this. This is fabulous. It is truly an honor and privilege to be with you this morning as we celebrate your successful journey through the Pivot program. Your hard work, your perseverance, your tenacity, your determination have all paid off as you transition to this next phase of your lives. You have faced tremendous challenges as you navigated your academic and work obligations in the throes of a global health pandemic and a racial pandemic as well. None of us was prepared for the destabilizing nature of this twin pandemic. However, despite the tough days that you all faced, you kept your eyes on the prize. And here we are, urging you on to live your lives with pride and purpose as you move forward. You are all a symbol of what is possible in this world, in the face of adversity. You exemplify what Pivot is all about. And that is hope, and I mean real hope for the future. You balanced your schoolwork, your school assignments, and met the expectations of your internships while managing the personal aspects of your lives. You exemplify what is good about Georgetown. You exemplify the best aspect of our city of Washington. And indeed, you exemplify what is good about this nation. During the past weekend, I was reading an article in the Washington Post about another executive order issued by President Biden. This particular executive order aimed to further equity and inclusiveness in federal hiring, and it built on a promise that he, President Biden, made on the day of his inauguration festivities. The White House statement that I was reading in the Post this weekend elaborated, and I'm going to quote from that. It said, "The enduring legacies of employment discrimination, systemic racism, and gender inequality are still very much felt today. Too many underserved communities remain underrepresented in the federal workforce, especially in positions of leadership. In addition to covering individuals based on race and gender, Other groups are covered by this executive order, and they include immigrants, first-generation professionals, people with disabilities, members of the LGBTQ community, rural residents, seniors facing age discrimination, and religious people who need workplace accommodations. President Biden also instructed the Office of Personnel Management to examine any barriers to employment for former, and I quotation marks, prisoners. I don't use that term, but I'm quoting. And to consider new ways to expand job opportunities for them. This new executive order did not just stop there. It announced that individuals with prior convictions, experience must be supported in accessing employment as they face and fully re-enter society. President Biden asked and added that, and I'm going to quote again, the federal government has an important role to play in supporting formerly incarcerated individuals, in fully reintegrating into our society, and making meaningful contributions to this country. End quote. Now that was a bold statement coming from the President of the United States. And he made it very clear that he wants the federal agencies to establish and build a more diverse pipeline into public service by creating new recruitment partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, and educational institutions serving Native Americans and women. I fully support such federal efforts to reach out and support returning citizens to assume their rightful place in society in the ways that President Biden described in the executive order. However, I would take this a bit further by advocating that the PIVOT program can certainly be a formidable pipeline for PIVOT graduates. We don't need to stop with HBCUs, HSIs. Let's incorporate the PIVOT program and let us create and demand that a pipeline be established between the PIVOT graduates to seek careers in public service. I say let's give it a try and test the proverbial waters by holding these agencies accountable. I can think of no better way for the agencies to demonstrate their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion as espoused in the executive order than by exemplifying their intent and spirit by including returning citizens to the workforce throughout the federal government. As I reflect on the events of the past year, the most notable event was the tragic murder of George Floyd, whose death was looped countless times for all to witness. Several months later, we also witnessed the court proceedings of Chauvin, the police officer responsible for Mr. Floyd's murder. We also witnessed the guilty verdict that was handing down in his case. And just last week, we learned that this man, or this person, or whatever he is, was sentenced to 22.5 years in jail. Although many civil rights advocates and activists and other members of the public expressed their views that he should have been given much more time in jail, the sentencing that he actually received was unprecedented. Is this a pivotal moment in our judicial system? We've heard that word mentioned quite a number of times this morning. Pivotal. Should we interpret this development to mean that for once a Black family can obtain justice in such a case as Mr. Floyd's? Eric Garner's family certainly did not experience justice. Breonna Taylor's family, her mother did not experience justice. Michael Brown's family did not experience justice. Trayvon Martin's family did not experience justice. And the list of such cases go on and on and on, too numerous to capture this morning. We can only hope that the jurors in other cases will be fair, and there will be more judges like Judge Cahill, who rendered the verdict in the Chauvin matter. The 3 other defendants in Mr. Floyd's murder will appear in court this summer, and we will see whether justice will prevail in their respective cases. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Black lives do matter. Regardless of the outcome of those cases, we still have a racial pandemic, and the racial reckoning will have to take place if our society ever hopes to be just and fair. A society in which the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King stated, men, I'm going to add women to that, will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Pivot graduates, you have already shown that the content of your characters in all you have accomplished and the way you have cared for one another. I congratulate you on the great job offers. We heard about Camilla's offer from Deloitte. I mean, that is just amazing. I congratulate all of you on the great job offers that you have already received and that you will continue to receive as your career progresses, and the contributions that I'm confident that we know you will all make. I congratulate you on the inspiring business ideas and entrepreneurial plans that you have presented during the course of your study. I was so happy to hear that this year's winning business pitch is related to the critical work we have to do in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I'm also so happy to hear that some of this country's leading firms, such as Deloitte, are hiring Pivot Fellows. We pride ourselves on the great networks of graduates who leave the hilltop and go out into the world to do good work. And now you are part of that centuries-long tradition. We recognize that many, if not all of you, have a strong support system that includes partners, children, and other family members. We heard Camilla mention her sons, who I believe are here today to support her. Where are you? Oh, there they are. They don't want to raise their hands, being very modest. There they are, okay. We appreciate the support from all of your family members, for your loved ones, and we welcome your presence here today to witness the graduation. Last year, Dr. Paul Almeida, the Dean of the McDonough School of Business, offered remarks to the then Pivot graduate. I think that may have been the first cohort that graduated. And I very much liked a poem and his parting comments that he directed at those graduates. And I'm going to quote them here, as I believe that they are a fitting tribute to you and still have great relevance for us now. I'm going to echo Dean Almeida's sentiments, and again I'm quoting from him. Come home by hiring future Pivot Fellows. Come home for referrals, contacts, and advice. Come home to share your guidance and your expertise as teachers or guest lecturers. Come home to meet your colleagues, old and new. Come home to enrich who we are together. Or come home just to say hello. Come home, we'll be waiting, we'll keep the light on, unquote. You are Georgetown. You are really all Georgetown. We are Georgetown. Hoya Saxa. I salute you, I wish you well, and I know I'm going to read wonderful things about you. Thank you for enriching our community.
Showtime. time. Okay. So thank you, Rosemary. It is now my pleasure to finally present certificates to cohort 2. So graduates, please rise. All right. First up, Alexander Campbell. Anthony Floyd. Antonio Arnett. In absentia. Chandra Adams. Christopher Washington. Also, I see in absentia, Crystal Kitt. Dante Ellerby. Izueri Digifa. Looking beautiful as ever with her Flulango makeup. Monty Pollard. My fellow Bar Prison Initiative alum, Sean McKnight. Talib Shakir. Cohort number 2, Statesman Timothy Thomas. Tony McCrite, I believe that's in absentia. Okay. Congratulations to all the graduates.
Congratulations again to Cohort 2. Cohort 3, will you please rise and line up in the aisle for me, please? Ernest Boykin III. Ty Anthony Carter. Leonard Day. Camellia Finley. Charles Hopkins. Pascal Laporte. Victoria Hunt. Michelle Marshall. Latasha Moore. David Schultz. Another round of applause for all of our graduates. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Joshua Miller for closing remarks.
Thank you, Dana. All right, everyone. Please join me in congratulating all our Pivot Fellows on this very proud accomplishment. Somebody once said, I don't know if it was Aristotle, that sorrows shared are halved and joys shared are doubled. I know I speak for all of my colleagues when I say that days like today are exponentially joyful for us. Thank you for sharing that joy. We're incredibly proud of all of you for your achievements this year. We'll be watching with anticipation for your future success. Although today marks the end of our academic program, we hope that you know that we are still here to support you in any way we can. We won't stop helping you shoulder your sorrows, but we will be asking you to keep coming back to bolster the next cohort and the cohort after that, and to share your joys and successes for years and decades to come. You're a member of this community now. This is your home. And we very much look forward to seeing where your journey takes you next. We sincerely thank all the friends and family who have joined us for this joyous celebration. Thank you. This concludes the formal part of our ceremony. We invite you to stay for a celebratory reception on the third floor terrace under the tent. Thank you on the live stream.